Welcome to Drinking on the Edge. I'm its host, David Fuhrer, here at Radio Free Rhinecliff. Joining us is Matty Rosenberg, founder and co-producer, and Jen Hammoud here at Radio Free Rhinecliff, in Rhinecliff at the Epicurean. Once again, we have second time up co-host Carlo DeVito.
Thank you.
Carlo is an author, sometime winemaker, and much knowledgeable fellow. You might recall him joining us for a recent dive into New Orleans and bourbon. However, today we're bringing things back to home here in the Hudson Valley. We have with Carlo and I two distillers. We have from Valatie. Is that the correct pronunciation, Derek?
Valatie, New York.
Thank you, Valatie, New York. Derek Grout of Harvest Spirits.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. And side by side, cramped into the studio here with us is Andrew Richards of Millbrook's Shady Knoll Distillery.
Thank you for not adding an S to the Knoll, which everyone does.
We're here for primarily to learn about one of the things that the Hudson Valley has been known for centuries, apples, and working with apples, fashioning apple into spirits. We're going to be doing some diversions into grain spirits too, but mostly we're here for apples. Carlo, being far more versed in this subject than I'm going to let him take the lead on all this. Carlo?
I'm thrilled to be here. I've been to both of these distilleries, and I'm excited about both of them. I've known Derek. I realized I've known you almost 15 years now.
It's been a long time. We go way back.
I'm surprised he's still friends with me. That's good. And loving this. Applejack is, or apple brandy, depending on how you want to approach it, has been something that has started during the colonial period. The Dutch weren't much into the cider thing, but as the English took over the colony, you started to see more and more of that English influence come over, and cider became a bigger and bigger presence, especially here in the Hudson Valley and throughout New England. And one of the things that replaced rum was apple brandy or applejack, whichever you preferred it. There's no hard or fast rules. You guys can correct me as we go through, but there are no hard or fast rules. The tending of it usually is that brandy is aged in wine barrels or such, and applejack is aged in whiskey barrels, but that's not a hard, fast rule. It's been just a rubric. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, we could talk for hours about the differences between applejack and apple brandy, but for make matters simple, I'd say they're pretty much interchangeable the way people understand them today. Distilled from cider, distilled from apples.
Yeah, and apple brandy really being the most obvious answer, applejack being a little more curious because there's the frozen process and there's some weird things that people will throw out there as applejack that I think are a little less.
Yeah. Now you actually made scrumpy. So let's talk about what scrumpy is. Why don't you describe scrumpy?
All right, so scrumpy is really the frozen applejack, and it's a term, I've got to be honest, we've co-opted. It's a British term. Scrumpy is a unclarified farmhouse cider.
Yep.
But we're using it very loosely to talk about a frozen old-style colonial applejack where we actually freeze the hard cider and skim off the ice crystals as it's freezing and get a stronger, more fortified cider out of that. And we've just done that as an experiment. But nowadays, we very much appreciate the pommeau. And Andrew, you're making some pretty good, delicious pommeau. So we'll talk about that maybe.
So pommeau, it's pretty simple the way we do it. I can't necessarily speak to what the French do, but apple brandy mixed with apple juice, and it's got to be fresh apple juice. The strength of the brandy kills off all the wild yeast in the juice. At 17% in the bottle, it's shelf stable.
Now, can I butt in really quickly?
Sure.
Are you aging? You putting it in barrels after you blend the brandy and cider together?
The brandy is already aged about 4 years at this point. And then we put it back in the barrel for about 8 months.
Oh, it's got to have that delicious oakiness.
Yes, got to have the oak. Yeah.
The pommeau is very much Jurapiga out of Portugal, which is you've taken fresh juice and instead of fermenting, you add the brandy, as he explained. But port and Jurapiga and a lot of dessert wines in Europe are made in such a way. And pommeau is right up there like that. Pommeau is very popular in Europe, and there are only a handful of Pommeaus being made in the United States today.
And very little of it is exported from France. I know the Coeur de Lion, the Drouin family is doing a bit of that, but they sell precious little of it. And it's usually to expat French folks here in the United
Right.
States. Now, something that's worth getting back, let's step back a little bit. The two of you are not just fermenting cider and distilling spirit from it and then aging it and selling it. You're growing the apples.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about your role as pomologist and farmers.
I grew up on the apple farm. Our apple farm is located in Valatie, that's Columbia County, and I grew up one of 5 boys. And after I went away to college, came back and realized that I really did have an interest in the apple farm, but I didn't really have the skills of a farmer. Instead of going directly into pomology, I worked more on the marketing side of the apple farm, and that got me into the distilling side and hard cider and eventually into vinegar. But my family has been working the orchard on that land since the 50s, and what I'm doing is trying to just maintain the family heritage there on the farm, that same plot, by growing apples there.
How many trees, how many acres you got growing there?
It's hard to say because the trees are pretty small. They get smaller and smaller. The dwarf orchards are really small. I would say 250 acres, we probably have 20,000 trees or so.
The fascinating thing about apple growing these days especially is that a lot of new orchards are moving more toward the vineyard-style apple trees, which they narrowly cut and looks much more like a wine, looks like a vineyard rather than an orchard. It's easier to spray, it's easier to maintain. Your apples get more sunshine. So it's and some people say, no, we're going to go the conventional way, and others want to try that.
Also easier to harvest, I would say.
Yeah.
And so we have over 120 varieties on less than 4 acres, 1,800 trees. We're small. We're a micro operation at the end of the day. But all the fruit goes towards the spirits. And it's really the way you see everyone going at this point. I think people are, as old trees die off, they're going towards this dwarfing rootstock. And just to be clear, the dwarfing rootstock, same size apple, same flavor apple, same apple, just on a smaller tree.
Now, the other thing that I would mention here is that both of you guys do some really great whiskey as well. You make the John Henry single malt whiskey, which is one of my favorite American single malts.
Yeah.
And you are doing a dynamite rye whiskey over at Shady
Yeah.
Hill. So I just think that you've got some great, what did I say?
Shady Knoll.
Knoll, I'm
Knoll,
sorry.
yeah.
I think you're doing a dynamite rye. So it's really cool that you guys are doing these things. And I just thought I'd mention that because there's some great stuff going on.
It's funny. I feel like we apple brandy makers have to make a little whiskey here on the side in order to pay the bills, because apple brandy is such a niche spirit. It's got such a small following compared to the legions of bourbon drinkers and Scotch whiskey drinkers out there. For us to turn a profit, we almost by necessity have to turn to some other brown spirits.
We literally use the same terminology. The whiskey pays the bills. So
There you go.
Fortunately, you both do both extremely well, and the Hudson Valley is known, or should be known, for excelling in both of those styles of spirits, more, I would think, than most parts of the United States. The fact that you do apples really well and you do grains really well here in the Hudson Valley, that's unique. You don't find that too often, that crossover.
No, there's a good, strong distilling industry, craft industry here. And these two places are producing really wonderful spirits. These are class spirits. These are really great stuff.
And for what it's worth, I want to give Derek credit for being a part of the industry way early on when we, as New Yorkers, had the Class D distiller's license.
Well, thank you.
The farm distillery.
You're giving me a lot of credit. I just happen to be in the right place at the right time, and it takes a lot of people to build an industry. And when we started our distillery, we were just one of 6 distilleries that year that opened up.
What year was that?
2008 is when we started. And year after year, there's been more and more distillers, some of them really well put together and planned, And it's exciting to be here in New York State. You can find just amazing spirits, and especially brandies, which you can't find around the country. And this apple brandy and pear brandy are usually things you find only in fruit-growing regions of the country, whereas vodka gin grains, you'll find that made from Florida to Alaska. So I think it's special to have a big array of brandies here in New York State that you don't find much the rest of the country.
I think aside from the two of you, there's only two other apple-focused or apple-adjacent distilleries here in the Hudson Valley. The folks at Warwick doing a good job over there too, but they've branched out again. Whiskey pays the bills, and they have other spirits too they're doing well with, and I believe wines.
And they also do wines, and their ciders. Their ciders were some of the first in the whole valley, and they're fantastic.
Nice folks over there, and they're doing good stuff here. But and also there's a new place that's about to open soon up near Hudson, I believe.
Right.
So again, it's just the four of you
that are really focused on fruit brandies. But other distilleries will occasionally do a one-off apple brandy or a one-off pear brandy.
Pear brandy, yeah.
But Pommeau is really unique. The fact that, Andrew, you're doing Pommeau and have this apple brandy, which I can't wait to try. So should we uncork some?
Let's do that. And while you're doing that, Andrew, before you start telling us about the products again, let's hear a little bit about the history of Shady Knoll. How and when did you all get set up? And
we opened in 2015. I moved up on the day we broke ground on our distillery. My background was construction, so putting up the buildings, and now we have 6 different buildings was something that I didn't get intimidated by. But really, I'm going to be very honest. It was my father-in-law, not at the time, my to-be father-in-law, was the one who had the idea. And he got me interested in it. I started researching, reading books, going to other distilleries, traveling to other countries, not for that purpose, but for whatever it was. And when he was ready to open Shady Knoll, I approached him and said, can I be the guy? And Rick basically said, okay.
That's Rick Kniper over there. And so you live on the farm or near it, and it's a family operation, just like the Grout family is over there.
Totally a family operation, just like Derek. I have one part-time employee. Otherwise, I am the only employee. Rick lives in Dallas, so not to disparage him in any way, but he's not there every day on the farm.
Got it.
But no, Shady Knoll is a good story. We were completely family run. The idea that he put in this orchard 3 years before we built the distillery, that was the
curse
idea.
Now what do we do? Now that we have these trees in the ground, how do we?
Now that you actually did this, now what do you do?
Do we make hard cider? Do we make brandy?
So I do 10 to 15 gallons of hard cider per year. I put them into growlers. It's just for fun.
Yeah.
If people who come to the tasting room are really interested in hard cider, they get to taste some. But it's not an advertised product. It is not available.
Andrew, we're doing the same thing. We like hard cider, but we don't love hard cider. So we make some good hard cider for those customers who come in that want hard cider, but we do love brandy, and we do love distilled spirits from apples. So that's what we're really passionate about. So you and I are both similar that way.
As a teenager growing up in Chicago, I used to make my own hard cider right from the natural food store back then. To get the raw, unfiltered, fresh juice coming out from the countryside west of Chicago, put it in my refrigerator, pour myself a glass so I'd have some air in there, put it back in the refrigerator. Every once in a while, pour it open, get some air in and out, take a little bit out, wait for it to ferment. And
did it come out? Was it good?
Oh, my buddies and I, we used to get a nice buzz. It probably got about 4% maybe, but we could feel it back at that age, and we got a nice little buzz on. We didn't have to go asking people to buy us beer at the liquor store. We'd make our own hard cider.
We tried that in high school, but it never turned out drinkable. It was always dumpable. We'd put a balloon over the cap. We'd take baker's yeast, and we'd put the baker's yeast in the gallon of cider and stick it in our closet and put a balloon over it like an airlock. And when the balloon deflated, it was supposed to be alcoholic, but
Right.
it never turned. And maybe that's the reason I'm not as passionate about hard cider nowadays, is because I was turned away from hard cider as a youngster. But
We make all of our cider for distillation with a natural fermentation, spontaneous
Really?
fermentation.
what I
Don't
did.
pitch any yeast, don't add any sulfite, just put it under airlock in a cube, one of those 275-gallon totes, and we let it roll for about 5 months.
Oh, really?
wow.
Wow.
Sometimes 6 or 7, because the
Uh-huh.
apples are pressed at different times. With 120 different varieties, we're picking some stuff at the end of August, and we're picking some stuff
Right.
right before Thanksgiving.
Right.
All right, so I got to try some of this brandy now. It really got me thinking.
All right. So the first thing that's poured, though, is what? What?
So one thing, I just poured a few beverages going around, and Andrew, I'll pour you one. This is our reserve Applejack. This is our. Is this it?
Which is this really beautiful bottle.
Yeah,
So,
it's a
I mean,
great
you guys
bottle.
can't
And
see it
how
right
old
now,
is this?
but that's
How
really
old is this
cool.
Applejack now?
That's what you have there. This is a 13-year-old Applejack,
Yeah.
and
It's really
just-
special.
It's slipping down easy.
It's not filtered. We didn't want to take any of the oils out, any of the flavor out, and it really should sit on your tongue like a delicate old rum.
It's wonderful.
And it doesn't have a pronounced apple flavor. In fact, if you didn't know it was distilled from apples, you might not guess that it was a brandy. You might say that it was some rum or some bourbon or something, but it's not meant to have a big apple flavor. We distilled, and I can go on about Applejack and apple brandy just a little bit longer, is that, in my opinion, the difference between the two, to really split hairs, is that the Applejack has less flavor of apples. The apple brandy would have more flavor of apples, and it's achieved in a number of different ways. The way we make it different is that we're distilling it to a high proof, almost like an apple vodka, before it's aged in bourbon barrels. And if we were trying to make more of an apple brandy, we would distill it to a lesser proof, to a lower proof, so it would have more apple flavor in it before we aged it. And that's just a stylistic difference.
And the funny part about Applejack, to me, versus apple brandy, what have you, is that Applejack sometimes gets put in the whiskey section. So when you're looking for it, you suddenly find it in the whiskey section instead of the brandy section. It's a bastard child in that way, and it is what it is. But this reserve here that you have is spectacular.
Is this available for commercial sale, or is this just
Yeah.
a library release?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can find this in liquor stores around the Hudson Valley, of course, at our tasting room at Golden Harvest Farms and at the Rhinebeck Farmers Market.
I want to digress for just 1 second, just because these gentlemen have they're not that they don't have great experiences with hard cider. The Hudson Valley is home to something like 15 cideries up and down the Hudson Valley. Some of the best ciders on the entire East Coast are made up and down this river. For people who are ever going to travel here and go to these two guys' fine distilleries, there's some wonderful ciders being made up and down the valley that are absolutely spectacular, and you want to go try them out.
It's a good point. And we're getting to the point where, with our tasting room, where do we start offering some other products besides our own? And whether it's wine, whether it's cider, whether it's beer, there's amazing things being made here in the Hudson Valley.
Yeah.
We want to include everybody, because not everyone who shows up at the doorstep wants to drink 42.
You're selling some honey there, I recall.
We make honey as well. This was the first year that we didn't lose a hive over the winter.
Wow, that's impressive. That's super impressive.
That right now we have not integrated the honey into the spirits. That's my next
Yeah.
project.
Goal. Cool.
But back to what you're saying, there's a lot of Asian between craft beverage producers, hard cider makers working with brandy makers, brewers working with whiskey makers, wineries. And a lot of it stems from the fact that we can sell each other's products in our tasting rooms. We're distillers, but we can sell beer, wine, and hard cider from other New York State brands in our tasting room. So that really, without any other paperwork, it really helps us diversify the stores that sell our product. It helps us get our name out there. Also builds relationships with these other producers. So when I pick up the phone and I have a question, I can easily pick up and find out what's going on in the beer world or the wine world here in New York State.
And that's how he and I started off, because we were making grappa together, and I was carrying his products in my tasting room, and he carried our wine in his tasting rooms. And he got silly after that, so it was good.
And the collaborations even go beyond that. The barrel exchanges,
Right?
That when I'm done with a barrel, I might sell it to a hard cider maker, and when the hard cider maker's done, they might sell it back to me and on. So barrels have multiple lives as they go from producer to producer.
One of the fun ones that we're experimenting with is with a maple syrup.
Oh, it's
producer.
Awesome.
And not Crown, but
So maple syrup put into different barrels, is that what you're talking about?
so the syrup goes into a whiskey barrel.
Got it.
And then they sell it back, and we put the whiskey into a syrup barrel.
It's a cool thing, and it works very well. And there's some really good ones out there that are doing that. So
It's a weird barrel. I brought this Applejack in that I aged in a rum barrel. I got some Jamaican rum barrels from Appleton Estate, and I put some Applejack in a rum barrel. And this is a 10-year-old. And if you thought that the other one tasted like rum, this one really tastes like rum, just a wee little bit. Now, I love rum.
I love rum too, yeah.
I love aged rum.
We've done a
Love
couple of
aged
rum episodes here recently, Derek, so the listeners don't mind hearing about rum. Be sure you pass it around to the folks out in our audience too.
Oh yeah, this totally smells like rum.
So these barrels, we sell our barrels through a brokerage that go to brewers all around the country that are looking for ex-apple brandy barrels for their beers. And this broker said, why don't you age some of your Applejack in Jamaican rum barrels? And since we have a lot of Jamaican farm workers that have worked for our family farm for generations, I thought this would be an interesting way to honor them. And this is hopefully a rum-inspired apple brandy. Cheers.
Cheers. It's fantastic.
It's
super smooth. And really lovely.
Really supple. I think it's a perfect marriage between the two spirits.
Yeah. This will be released hopefully later this year. So this is not even released yet. It's 10 years old.
Wow.
Random question. The Jamaican rum barrels, bung on the side or bung on the top?
That's a good question. So the barrels originally came from Jack Daniels, and the bungs were on the side. But when they went to Jamaica, they age all of their rums with the barrels upright. So then they drilled new holes in the heads of the barrels. So I received these barrels with two holes, one on the side and one on the top, that made it really difficult.
I was going to say the vertical aging is now the big thing in the major distilleries. Everything is north-south, and it's easier to move around. You put it on pallets. It's safer than a normal rick house would be. And you're seeing a lot of the newer buildings in like Kentucky and Tennessee especially, where they're moving to that style.
But the casks are they're expensive. Oak casks are more and more expensive as the years go on, harder to find. The demand for them is strong, and even the resale aftermarket for used barrels is more than what new barrels used to cost just a few years ago.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's an expensive business to be in the aged spirit market.
That's right.
I'm curious, when you work with all these different apples, I presume there are a multitude of varieties that you're working with. Hudson Valley is well known for having just an amazing number of apple varieties, probably more than any other place in North America, I would think, in one concentrated area. So how is it that you work with these apples in making your apple spirits? Are you looking just for one particular flavor or from one apple? Or are you mixing them to get a balance of many different characteristics, be it something on the palate or something on the nose?
So our two farms are very different. Andrew's farm has a vast number of varieties of apples. Our farm has really just a few varieties of apples. We're really concentrated on the eating varieties, the ones you would think of, the ones you'd see at the supermarkets, the Honey Crisps and the Macauans and the Goldens and all these eating apples. They're not particularly well suited for cider varietals. Now, there's three basic buckets of apples. You could think of the eating apples, the modern eating apples. You could think of the heirloom apples, those like Baldwins and wine saps that Northerners buys these apples you don't see too much of. And then there's the third bucket, which are cider varietals. And those are very specific apples that might have particular tannins or acidities or flavors that are really particularly good for hard cider making.
Not the kind of thing you want to be chewing on.
No, not at all. No, so the apples we're growing on our farm are very much the first kind, the eating apples. And you could think of, they are not particularly well suited for a broad range of apple flavors like Andrew's apples are, which are going to be more in the cider and heirloom buckets. So you want to speak to that a little?
Yeah, that's a really important topic that we need to cover.
We take very much pride in the fact that we grow 120 different varieties, and we do have Liberties and Maccoons, Maccown,
Yeah.
but we delve deep into some of the other varieties. We really, I think we have some grafts from France and England that might not have been legally carried over here. Can't speak to that because I didn't do it. But
I want to comment and jump in. The flavor of your brandy, of this
This
apple
brandy is fantastic.
I haven't tasted anything like this since like being in Normandy and tasting Calvados in France.
I was going to say that's exactly what it reminds me of, is Calvados.
the one thing I have to mention that helps the spirit is that we do a finishing barrel, so Madeira wine.
Okay.
Everything
It's
goes, all the apple products
special
go
sauce.
through a Madeira wine barrel. All the whiskey products go through a port wine barrel.
Okay, don't give away all your secrets now on the air. People are listening.
You know what? They can try.
Yeah, but I think, but it's a good point. Or the
Really lovely.
the fact that your distillery uses up the majority of your farm's apples. Our distillery uses up actually a pretty small portion of our farm's apples. So the purpose of our distillery is really almost like the recycling station of the apple farm, where we're taking all these surplus apples, the ones that don't make it on the shelf, the ones that don't make it in the
They
pies,
aren't pretty.
the
The
ones
ugly apples.
The ugly apples.
beyond, the distressed apples is like what we
I
like
would have
to
been
call
cider
them.
in another life.
So we like to take these distressed apples and then get them beyond hard cider and into a spirit, and somehow that's the whole goal of the distillery at Golden Harvest Farms, Harvest Spirits, it's a small part of a big farm, whereas Andrew's distillery is the major part of the farm, and it's really able to focus on the flavor of the apples more than you have more control over the flavor of your apple brandy than I think we do with our
We lose
monoculture.
1 to 3% of our trees per year, and we have to replant.
Is that overwinter kill, or is that?
It's everything.
Could just aging out.
Here in the Hudson Valley, we are subject to pests, disease, weather, all of the
It's not a great place to grow stuff sometimes. Some years.
But we get to replant 1 to 3% every year. The worst year we ever had, we replanted 120 trees, which, if you do the division from 1,800, it's a lot
Yeah.
of the percentage of what we're putting out there. But yeah, we do have some control over what's happening.
So could you list a couple of the other more unique or cider-focused apples? Because you were into it, and then we interrupted because the brandy was so good.
Or the varieties, what's hot
Yeah.
right now.
Well, that was hot, but what he's got, because real cider varieties, as you pointed out, are completely different from the eating apples that we're so familiar with. But if he could mention some of the names of those apples.
Medal d'Or, Frequin Rouge. What's the funny wine sap?
Oh, is there any Asopus Spitzenberg?
Asopus
I'm
Spitzenberg.
probably saying that wrong. Dabinets and Kingston.
Gavignac,
Kingston Black,
Kingston,
right?
Kingston
Yeah,
Black.
Russets.
King David.
They've got such colorful names.
And very local names.
Yeah.
And in traditional orchards, what they used to do is put the cider apples on the outside of the orchards so that the deer and the other animals wouldn't eat the stuff that was meant for the market on the inside.
Or the passersby walking.
Right, exactly.
So the brown mushy and the flavorless awful. And they come up with variety names where people wouldn't really. The onion flavored grunion.
Andrew, Derek had just mentioned a few moments ago, he dropped mention of your distillery. And I know from having visited a month ago with Carlo that you have just recently expanded your distilling operations there.
Yes, we did, and thank you for mentioning it. What we did, though, is expand on the whiskey side of things. We said earlier tonight that the whiskey pays the bills, and it continues to pay the bills. We quadrupled our whiskey capacity, bought a new still, 2 new fermenters, really doubling down on the rye, which is sitting right here. Maybe we'll try it.
Oh, you got to. It's great.
And it's not because we don't love our apple products. They're just honestly not as saleable as the whiskey.
And so I think I recall you telling us that you quadrupled your capacity. Is that correct?
We haven't capitalized on that yet because
Still early
it has
days.
taken a year and a half to even get things up and running.
So if you
Nothing like putting in new stainless steel and a building as well.
We had a small infrastructure expansion, but then adding all the new tanks, we had to do a new cooling system. We had to put in a steam boiler because we always ran off direct fire. Our old still is direct fire. Our old still is 75 years old. It made cognac and cognac for 50 years, and then we bought it used. And it's a beautiful still.
It's
by
gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
By making grain and whiskey in there, we were crushing it in a way that it should have never been
Bad crushing.
treated. No, like
Good crushing?
bad
crushing it.
Bad crushing. Pushing it hard.
Like making
Especially
little.
rye.
The copper was getting
funky.
beat up to a point. And if I can strip my whiskey in my new stainless still, strip isn't a bad word, by the way.
It's
It's just a technical term.
another way we express ourselves.
I always feel good when I strip.
We can finish it in the old still,
Got it.
purely copper. And that is the plan. But we've yet to get to that point because getting this whole thing up and running and getting your chem treatment for the water and going to a steam boiler from a direct fire is totally changing the game.
Yeah.
Wait, you were direct fire with your
We're
original-
still direct fire.
With the old one he's got, which is beautiful. It's
And
a piece of art.
100% of the apple product is made on direct fire. Only the whiskey will now change to stripped on a steam still, finished on a direct fire.
So this rye that I'm pouring right now, this is also direct fire?
Correct. Yep. And even the stripping run.
So just to be clear for those who are listening, right now, Derek is taking the opportunity to pour the Shady Knoll rye. It's not his rye, but I'm so excited because this is a great rye.
I should mention on Wednesday, the American Distilling Institute
2 days ago.
awarded this product that we're pouring right now a double gold, best in class.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I'm going to go to Baltimore in August to do my thing.
There you go.
Congratulations.
The Mark Spitz of rye right here. There you go.
All right. So
But again, this is just to pay the bills. The apple products are where our heart really lies. That said, this is good. This is. I'm not going to.
So the
Right,
rye that you use to distill this hails from where?
We grow the rye. We're 70% rye, 15% corn, 15% malt. The corn and malt we buy from a place out near Buffalo, near Craft Malt.
But you're growing the rye yourself.
We're growing the rye ourselves.
Hey.
And I have a 1964 International Harvester Combine because no one will come cut my rye.
Living the dream.
So
Living the dream,
Living the
baby.
dream.
Oh, you should see me on top of that thing. It's open cab. It's pretty wild. Like,
It's pretty rustic.
you feel like you could die at any moment, and yet you're doing a great thing at the same time.
And are you planting a specific rye?
We do buy a specific rye. I'm not gonna. No, it's.
This is absolutely delicious.
It's
I
from
could-
Minnesota. Got it.
Good job.
Yeah, really a lovely rye. This is a really beautiful rye.
So we make whiskey too. We started making whiskey 10 years ago when we had a frost. We had a crop failure. We didn't have anything to distill in the winter. When we ran out of apples, our distillery was getting colder and colder because the only heat that's generated in the distillery is from the kettle. So we were starting to worry about freezing our pipes in the distillery. And we reached out to a number of different breweries to ask if they would make us an emergency batch of beer to distill. And luckily, one brewery up in Lake George agreed to work with us and made a whole bunch of beer for us. And a lot of people don't know that whiskey is made from distilling beer, and especially in particular, malt whiskey is made from distilled beer. So we took this beer and made malt whiskey this one winter when we didn't have enough apples. And every year since then, we spend a month or two in the winter distilling beer, making malt whiskey, and it does help pay the bills.
Speaking about paying the bills, how can we communicate apple spirits more to the listeners and the people who appreciate fine spirits of all types? Why should they be buying locally produced, locally grown apple spirits, aside from keeping a local attitude? The quality's here. Carlo and I both agree. We don't have any skin in the game, except we like and we know good booze. So why should people be considering drinking apple-based products over whatever big brand they buy from wherever in the world it's coming from?
I would say there really should only be two considerations that one makes when they're deciding to purchase a spirit, whether it's an apple spirit or a whiskey. And it should come down to the price and the taste. Does it fit your pocketbook, your price point, and how does it taste compared to the other alternatives out there? And when you're tasting an Applejack, our 13-year-old Applejack is $75. That's our most expensive product. To get a 13-year-old bourbon or a 13-year-old Scotch malt would be a lot more than $75. And then when it comes down to the taste of the 13-year-old Applejack, to me, is very refined, delicate, flawless, a sweet smell but a dry finish, whereas a whiskey is going to have a very powerful, unctuous, intense flavor. And sometimes you don't want such a overbearing flavor. You want something delicate on your palate. So that's what I think it comes down to, is why choose apple over whiskey? Why choose brandy over whiskey? Price and flavor.
And just for the record, you do make a flagship Cornelius Applejack that is not the 13.
We do. We make our regular Applejack, which is a 5-year-old. I brought that today. It's delicious. It's more affordable. That's a $45 bottle for a 5-year apple brandy, and it's a lot cheaper than buying a 5-year-old. You're looking at probably $60 for a craft, starting $60, maybe $70 for that bottle.
And as more incentive, both of you have tasting rooms and operations for the people to come and just hang out and get to know what you're doing there on the farms, and maybe have a look inside of your distilleries too, huh?
For sure. We do all of our tours through the farm, into the distillery, and then you only get to taste after you hear me talk for 20 minutes.
But it's a good talk. It's a good talk.
And it's a beautiful landscape, beautiful scenery that you are
It's
at your farm.
It's very pretty, very bucolic. Yeah.
We're conveniently located on Route 9, the main drag there, going north out of Kinderhook. And our apple farm is a big one. You can't miss it. And we're known for our apple cider donuts, which you can get 7 days a week, year-round. The distillery also opens 7 days a week. And our barbecue smokehouse, is open seasonally. So it's open now, and that's 5 days a week. So that's applewood smoked pork, ribs, chicken, brisket.
And unfortunately, the bake shop is really good because that's added at least a few inches to my belly over the last 15 years.
Do either of you have any big events or festivals coming up that we should notify the public about? Or is it just daily anytime?
We don't do any. We have simple food truck Friday evenings.
Okay.
It's not really an event. It's just a 1 day a week where we stay open later. But since we're on the main drag, we try not to attract any more traffic parking issues because we're right on Route 9.
Fair enough.
Just pulling in and out. So we don't have any festivals or events per se.
We suffer from the opposite problem of being off the main drag and not getting enough traffic just coming by. So we have tried to create a few more events. That said, Grace Church from Millbrook, they do a yearly thing. That'll be in September.
That's Millbrook Winery.
I do want to carry Millbrook Winery wine because I think that would be a good fit for what we're offering, and not everyone wants to drink spirits. The one I'll throw out is June 15th. We have State Senator Rob Rollison, originally from Poughkeepsie, coming to do a 2-hour thing from 3 to 5. I don't know what that means because I literally don't know what it means.
The politicians around alcohol? Come on. Really?
Derek can speak to this, but we go to Albany every year.
We do, yeah, we do. With the distillers, New York State distillers are very active in Albany as we coalesce around common interests such as getting our product directly to consumer and bypassing the 3-tier system if we can, getting our products at your local farmers markets and so forth. So the Distillers Guild, Andrew and I have been active going up there and pushing for better spirits in New York State and for parity so that we can get our spirits, just treat them just like wine and beer and hard cider are treated in this state.
Compete with the big guys.
As much as you can,
as
right?
best as we can. We're always going to be small guys. I think that's one thing that brandy, I think, will be always the domain of small, scrappy producers and never be big and corporate. And that's something that's cool about brandy, and at least apple brandy. Maybe cognac can have some big corporate players like Hennessy, but when it comes to Calvados and apple brandy, I think you're always going to be playing with underdogs.
You had mentioned the farmers market a couple of times. It's worth mentioning that Drinking on the Edge will be doing an episode soon enough from the Rhinebeck Farmers Market, highlighting yourself and 4 or so other adult beverage purveyors who ply their wares at the Rhinebeck Farmers Market. So expect that in the weeks ahead.
Great.
Yeah, and I kept hearing about a pommeau, but nothing's hit my glass about
Well,
it.
that's what I was going to say. Is there anything else you were going to pour? Because the pommeau should go last.
That's true. It is a sweet thing.
Yeah, we made that mistake the last time. I want to make sure we go in order.
For all my tastings, I start with the pommeau.
That's a fabulous pommeau.
Then you go from there.
All right, let's go. Let's do it.
No, Derek, anything you want to slip in before we move into?
No, I want you to pour the pommeau because it's absolutely delicious,
right.
and I think that
It certainly is.
I think that the world needs to know a little bit more about what pommeau is. It's 2 words. Pomme is apple, and eau is French for water, so is apple water. And the way it's made is taking fresh apple cider and spiking it with a little apple brandy. The way we do it is we take our fresh apple cider and we spike it with a little bit of high-proof apple vodka, and then it gets put into a brandy barrel or a bourbon barrel. And then it sits for a while, picking up some of that lovely oaky flavor. But it only is spiked to about 15 to 20% alcohol, so it's not very alcoholic. And it's naturally sweet. There's no sugar added to it, so it's not a cordial or a liqueur. So it's less sweet than a cordial liqueur, but less alcoholic and more sweet than a brandy.
So we bottle at 17%. And that's rough math because it's just hard to nail it down.
This is so good.
Dude, that is so fantastic.
And you don't need to chill it. You just drink it room temperature.
It's like biting into a big, fresh apple. It's just gorgeous.
Rough math, 2/3 apple juice, 1/3 brandy. It drinks really easily. When we get in front of people, when we do events like Dutchess County Food and Wine Fest or my tasting room, #1 selling product. When we put it on a store shelf,
It's a ham sell.
Now, what is this retail for? The 750 ml bottle, which is a beautiful bottle. I gotta say,
It is attractive.
So we go 50 on that, which is high. And I'm not gonna lie.
Actually, it's not that high. I have a friend of mine who makes a lovely pommeau that charges $50 for a bottle half that size.
I was going to say it's a 500 milliliter.
It's a $375.
375?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's the range. It's usually in a 375, and it's usually about $40.
I like that how you put in a big bottle.
And there's a little sediment in the bottom. You have to give it a little quick shake. That's apple pectin. Think about buying a gallon of cider.
Right. Fresh cider is going to have that in it.
We filter it, but to a limited degree.
And I think that's totally okay now to have hazy beverages.
I think we turned the corner on that in terms of consumer perception some years back, and I think as long as the taste is there and the smell is fine,
And the authenticity.
nobody really bothers
I know.
about haziness anymore.
Between pet nats and
Oh, gosh,
hazy IPAs and everything else that's going on, there's a lot less ooh factor about, oh, I'm not going to drink that. It looks like it's busted.
With kombucha now and all the things.
Exactly.
Yeah, mother of vinegar.
Mother of vinegar. Speaking of vinegar.
Speaking of vinegar, not to change the subject too abruptly,
But-
but since we're talking about apples, might as well mention vinegar. I brought with me some of our balsamic apple vinegar.
Terrific. Let's taste.
And this is something I've been working on for about 10 years. And it all came from the idea of, why is all the balsamic vinegar in this country made from grapes? And why does all of it come from Italy? Why can't we make this stuff here in this country? And what are they doing in Italy? And why can't we do the same thing with apples? So I probably have some more cups down here, Carlo. I'll give this to you.
I'll just swig out of the bottle. It's fine.
So it's a cooking vinegar. It's really meant for salads and marinades and dressings.
It's absolutely incredible.
And it's made from apples. There's no sugar in it or thickeners or colors. And the way it's made is actually by it's a little convoluted process, but you're taking apple cider vinegar, the really sour apple cider vinegar, and you're blending it with a concentrated apple cider syrup. And you get the bricks to about 60, and you get the right consistency. And it's just an amazing, thick, rich, tongue-coating experience. And it's not a secret how we're making it. We're trying to tell everybody exactly how we're making it, because I think it's got potential to be made by several different apple farms.
I've had really excellent balsamic vinegars in my life over some really excellent sorbets or ice creams as far as the topping goes on that. And then I would suggest, even not having even tasted it, just from the smell, that'd be a nice compliment. Different types of ice creams if people want that for their summer desserts.
Yeah.
And Derek, as I heard you mention as we were meeting up here at the Epicurean, I do believe that some of your vinegars are for sale here at the Epicurean.
That's correct. We do have them for sale on the shelf here. And so we're here at the Epicurean, also available at the Farmers Market in Rhinebeck. But this is great because what's wonderful about vinegar, balsamic vinegar, is that you don't have to, it's not a protected name. You don't have to be in Italy to make this. It's not like cognac or Calvados. You can make balsamic vinegar, and it can be made from things other than grapes. So it's not a protected word. And to me, it's the one condiment that people are willing to spend money on for high quality. Whereas mustard, ketchup, people are not going to spend that much money on high quality mustard or ketchup. But when it comes down to olive oil, or particularly balsamic vinegar, there can be some that fetch super high prices. There's some price elasticity there.
Mustard's maybe a little bit more than ketchup, but you got your ceilings pretty low there on the best mustards. But anyways, it should not necessarily be looked upon as a condiment, but as I just mentioned, if you put balsamic vinegar of this quality level atop a really fine sorbet or ice cream, gelato type ice cream, the dense stuff,
and this really
make a wonderful topping to this.
This really, again, the reason we're making vinegar is to support our apple brandy making business. Vinegar pays the bills. Like you're saying, whiskey pays the bills. Balsamic vinegar helps pay the bills so that we can continue making high quality apple brandy.
And I can say that I visited Derek 8 years ago, and the first thing you showed me was your vinegar.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff.
This is the future.
It was the first thing that
the future is sour, a little bit sweet.
And I was like, okay, I came to a distillery.
Yeah.
And the first thing you showed me was the vinegar. And I thought, he must know what he's doing.
Yeah.
I haven't tasted it until right now.
Andrew,
it's really good.
Andrew, even though I've been doing this for 10 years, I still didn't know what I was doing until just a couple of years ago. And even then, I'm still learning all the time. I made so many mistakes and went down so many different wrong paths trying to make this vinegar. But, unfortunately, there's not a lot of people to ask.
I got a question here. I know from experience, time in Europe, that grape-based vinegar producers of any kind, if they're going to be doing that and they actually have a winery as part of what they do, they got to keep the processing areas very far apart.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to spread the wrong bacteria between the two.
Yeah.
Is the same hold true for what y'all are doing?
I'd say for me, not so much, because we're really distillers. And if we're just doing the fermentation and acidification nearby, I would be worried about cross-contamination. But since we're We're doing fresh hard cider. Andrew and I are really just putting our hard cider in kegs and growlers. We're not putting it in cans and bottles.
So that concern doesn't really exist.
It doesn't
for y'all.
really matter for us. Yeah, we're not using sulfites, either of us.
No, we're rolling dirty.
Hardcore.
right.
You guys are hardcore.
Hey, before we wrap this up, quick plug. How can people find you? Where are you located? And what is your website address, please?
Yes.
All right. We're located at Golden Harvest Farms. Our distillery is Harvest Spirits. The website is harvestspirits.com. We're located in Valatie, New York, which is in northern Columbia County. Our tasting room is open 7 days a week, as is our farm. You can find us at the Rhinebeck Farmers Market and the Troy Farmers Market and a few liquor stores around the Hudson Valley.
And you do ship around the country where law allows that.
We're only allowed to ship through third parties only to certain states. So unfortunately, we're not allowed to ship directly to consumer.
You got to come for a visit then. And spring is here and summer's not far away.
Yeah.
And how about you,
Andrew?
Yeah, spirits are not treated like wine and beer.
Right.
Just to be clear, we should all vote for parity.
Yes.
Mhm.
Here.
This is an important thing.
Here.
We are in Millbrook, New York, Central Dutchess, 37 Brush Hill Road. Brush Hill is not a big road. It used to be dirt until 5 years ago.
Oh, my.
It's called a farm road.
But we do tours and tastings 7 days a week by appointment. We don't have regular hours. We are by appointment. You can find my cell phone number on the website, and that is who you will contact because there's only one full-time employee, and you're sitting here with him.
And that website address is?
ShadyKnowDistillery.com.
Thank you guys very much.
Two great distilleries doing really hardcore stuff. They're the real deal. There's no sourcing going on here. It's all real. It's all natural, and these guys are doing a hell of a job.
Thank you, Carlo. Appreciate that.
Derek, Andrew, and Carlo, thanks for drinking on the edge here in Radio Free Rhinecliff, and look forward to seeing you at your distilleries very soon.